All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Dragon's Den. Today we have a very special guest with us today, and we're going to be talking about trauma and action. So trauma and action made us think of a wonderful lady who wrote a book about trauma treatment and action. And her name is Dr. Varleisha, and we have her with us today.
Thank you.
How are you doing, Dr. Varleisha?
Doing great. Excited to speak with you all.
All right, so we actually, before we get started, can you kind of like explain to them who you are, what you do, and let them know who you, like, you know, what you do? Because I know, but they don't, so.
Sure. So by profession, because, you know, we are multifaceted people. But in terms of my career, I'm an occupational therapist. I've been one for over 20 years now, believe it or not. I went to University of Delaware for my undergraduate in psychology. I graduated from there in 2000. Yes, I am that old. I went on to get my master's in occupational therapy at Columbia, a doctorate in occupational therapy at Jefferson, and then ultimately my PhD in health sciences. And so one of my, I guess, claims to fame in the state of Delaware is that I started the first Master's of Occupational Therapy program at Wesley College, and it's now at Delaware State University. And so that's the first program in the entire state, which I was very happy to return back to my home state from living in New Jersey for years. Now I reside in Maryland, where I am Vice President of Practice Engagement Capacity Building at the American Occupational Therapy Association. It's a mouthful. And I'm also still an occupational therapist. I'm still licensed, actually, in the state of Delaware. And so I don't really practice, but I do a lot of lectures, education and training. And my full-time job, we support our practitioners. We also try to bring to light the field of occupational therapy so that we can expand our role. We work with the whole person. So you all want to talk about mental well-being today, we do that. We understand the body. I always keep, let me see if I have it. I always keep little models around of the brain because I educate people on the brain and how the brain connects to our behavior and how we function and how we can improve our functioning. And that's kind of, occupational therapy. We help you do things that you want to do, need to do, and have to do, whether it's for yourself or for other people. So we're a holistic approach.
What do you say to these 12th graders, like not knowing what field they want to go into, but knowing that occupational therapy is actually a great field to go into? What can you actually express to them and say?
Choose occupational therapy. I am biased, but I did mention the program that's at Delaware State, but there's also occupational therapy assistance. That program is located through Delaware Tech, which is a huge opportunity. But, I'm joking, but I am serious because I found, my path in OT. I was confused on what I wanted to do because I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, and that didn't quite work out. I mean, we have our strengths and weaknesses, and certain courses I took in college just weren't my friend. So I realized that I was good at psychology. I realized I was good at writing. I was a professional dancer, so I knew about the body. And so it all just aligned for me. So really, I think mapping out your interests, what brings you passion, what brings you joy, and then trying to find a profession that aligns with that. But I joke about OT because we have therapists that work in so many different areas. We have school-based practitioners. We have hand therapists. We have those who work in acute care hospitals, mental health hospitals, the community, working with those who are what we call houseless, and many will say homeless. And so the gamut, we work in ergonomics and engineering. We could design a kitchen so that someone that has a physical disability or limitation can use it along with their entire family members, and we call that universal design. So it's endless.
Wow. So we're going to jump right into this because I know these guys are waiting. They've been having questions they've been talking about all day. So I'm going to let them actually talk to you and see what they got on their minds. What we got, GI?
But
You got to speak up. Yes.
what would be the
You got to speak up like really good.
what would be the best way to like deal with like trauma that you have in like everyday life from different situations?
Well, I think the best way to deal with it really depends on the person. It depends on the severity of it. But in most models, we talk about first acknowledging the trauma. And so the action approach in my book, action, that word, each letter stands for something. And so A is acknowledging and being aware of the trauma in the first place. And that's a big deal. It sounds simple, but I had to do this exercise for myself. I think it was 2 years ago, I rewrote my bio, which, when people want you to do a speaking engagement, they want to read about you before you start. And I had advice from someone to tell my story. And it was a lot to really think about every little thing, even though I wasn't going to use all of that in the bio, everything that happened along my path. And so that's the first step. But I will say to do that with support. Having a family member, friend, or therapist, which I'm a proponent of therapy. I get therapy myself. I used to do it once a week. I do it once a month now and as needed. Even if you feel good, but I think it's just healthy to address the things that are still there. They might be hidden and lurking, and we're all triggered by things that happen in our lives that might remind us of something that we think we might have healed from. Right, that is still there. So first acknowledging it, but with support, and to really seek out professional help. And I'm also a huge proponent of not just simply talk therapy, but the physical part of it, whether it is exercise or for me, it's dance, and movement and walking, hiking. Those things will help you to release the stress hormones that might be in your body.
Yes, definitely. That definitely helps out. A lot of our kids actually express a lot of concern about family members who we actually got news that someone had recently committed suicide. So that's been a big thing that a lot of our students are, they actually know someone who has, and they're still dealing with it. And we have someone who's with us who has dealt with it and very close to her. So did you have a question for her? She's very shy. You got
Sorry, I don't want to think about it. It's okay.
It's okay. Take your time.
It's okay. No, I can't.
We'll come back. We'll come back to her. We'll come back to her.
So my question is,
Go ahead.
My question is, what do you do when you don't have support?
So that is a great question. I think one thing is to ground yourself, and putting yourself first. So it's one thing to have people love and to support you, but you have to be that for yourself. And that's with anyone, even if you're surrounded by people. If you don't have that for yourself, you are not available to let it in from other people. So you first need to, really align yourself and ground yourself. And that's, one of the areas that I'm recently starting to re-acknowledge in terms of my profession is that we not just work on the emotional well-being, but we also work on spiritual well-being, if we're looking at a holistic approach. So for me, that spiritual practice of aligning yourself is crucial. I mean, there were days I just laid on the floor, literally grounding myself, connecting to my body, my breath. Sometimes you have to give yourself a literal hug and, say, I'm here for me. I love me. I'm working with the best resources I have at the moment. I'm doing my best. And then when you made mistakes or things didn't go your way, acknowledging that you did what you could do at that moment with what you were equipped with, the tools that you had or what you used at that moment. And then seek out that support. You might not have people around you, but there's support. One of the initiatives that we are working on at AOTA is highlighting the new number, and I don't know if you all are familiar with this, 988. So instead of calling 911 when someone's having a mental health crisis, whereas, sometimes, unfortunately, someone in a crisis could be then almost criminalized, right, for their behavior or misunderstood, and it could lead to something that really isn't beneficial to that person. Now we have 988 where it's supposed to give them services and support. And there's also apps for teenagers, and I don't have the names in front of me at the moment, but they actually have apps where you can have numbers and people connected to it, peers connected, that if you need help, you can then just hit that button on your phone to say, I'm in a crisis and that I need help. And if I find the name, I'll try to send it to you so maybe you can attach it to your show.
Do you guys feel as though that would help, like some people or even yourselves, if you were in, a crisis and you could just not call 911, but call 811? 988. I'm sorry. I was 988. I don't know. I'm looking at my screen. So sorry. I think that will.
I think that'll help a lot of people.
You think so? All right. Who else next?
And I will say, I am not sure in the state of Delaware if they have it up and running or where they are in their process. Every state has been different with the rollout, but it started back in July. So I'm fingers crossed. Hopefully Delaware has that accepted.
Will work out. Yeah. 988.
Okay. What do you do for someone that doesn't wants to open up to people, but they feel like there's no one there, but there really is? You just are so afraid to open up, they're gonna judge you.
Good question. That's
They're afraid of being judged because of what they're feeling or experiencing. I would say to that person, you are not the only one. And it's probably a group of people around you that has at one point in time felt that same energy that you're experiencing. And, judgment is something that doesn't serve us. I know that, especially as teenagers, right? It's important to feel wanted and accepted. But as my mom used to say, they don't pay your bills, right? I've gotten to this stage of life where I care about people, but not what they may think about me or how they may judge me. So if I need help, I, will reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm not okay. If someone says to you, how are you? Are you, having a good day? We automatically say, oh, yeah, I'm great. And it may not be the truth. And take those moments when someone says, hey, how are you? To say, I could be better. Open up the conversation and understand that.
I think in the world we live in, though, a lot of people hide behind their faces. If you have a smile on your face and you're so upset, but nobody knows you're upset, but you walk around and you're so happy, but nobody asks you what went on that night. And you come into work or you come into school and something may have happened at home. A lot of these kids are just walking around with a smile on their face or even a blank stare, and you don't even know what's going on because they feel like they don't have anybody to talk to. So definitely.
Yeah, and if you're that person that wants to be a listening ear, make yourself available. And you're not, intruding on someone's personal space by saying, hey, genuinely saying, hey, how are you? How are you doing? Not just, hey, how are you doing? What's up? And they're, oh, I'm fine. Right? No, how are you doing? Everything okay? And that allows them that window to say, they really seem interested in what's happening with me. Maybe I can share with them.
So what do you do when you're in a situation where you want to ask for help, but you don't know how?
I think to come up with a way of saying that you're not okay. you know? So it's one thing. It's hard for us. I know me, I'm stubborn, I'm a Scorpio. It's hard for me to sometimes say I need help. I've always been independent in that way. But if I can't ask for help, I could at least say, I could be better. I'm not in a great space, right? So when you're saying that to someone, even if it's a teacher, a parent, or someone in the community that, you know, you're connected with, saying, I'm having some challenges, that allows them to then have that space to say, how can I help you, right? You may not know what you need. Sometimes it's hard to ask for help when you don't even know what you need. You just feel like I'm not okay and something's off, or I'm feeling overwhelmed. So finding that language of, you know, what you're experiencing, I think is the first step. And if you can't reach out for help in that way, maybe, you know, have a peer buddy. Have a friend or, you know, one of your classmates that you can lean on, and when those moments happen, you can mention to them. I'll be honest, I know my youngest has expressed certain things that he heard from his friends, reached out to me, then I reached out to the parent, who was very supportive to that child. So just, you know, have an ear for your peers, your friends, because usually people will give you a red flag. They'll be there. You just have to pay attention.
So what is some advice for somebody who wants to communicate with somebody but is so scared to let their guard down because of past trauma and from past situations like relationships, but they want to talk to them, but they don't know how. They're too scared.
And can I clarify, talk to them socially or talk to them about their problems and things they're experiencing?
Like a relationship, or like communicating with your loved one, but you're scared to like communicate with them because you don't know if they feel the same way.
Right. So basically you're saying like communicating within a relationship, like if you were with someone. Okay.
That's a good question. Very mature question. So I had the pleasure of writing a book chapter recently, which I haven't shared with me. I've been so busy, but we have a textbook on sexuality. And one of the chapters, the chapter that I was part of, I wrote about trauma and sexual health and sexuality, which and really included relationships. So someone that has experienced trauma, whether it's emotional or other forms of trauma, physically, they may be challenged with connecting with people overall, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship. So I think the first step is to work on that, to work on yourself, because you might want to bring someone else into your space, but your cup has to also be full, right, before you can have that interaction. We know that people that have trauma have experienced challenging relationships, high rates of divorce, the loss of jobs. And so, again, I go back to getting self-help, self-care, therapy, working, with other peers and colleagues to be able to talk, to try to practice in a way. And the next thing would be to know your triggers, right? So for some, it could be a word. It could be a smell, cologne or perfume. It could be someone's facial expression that brings you back to someone that may have been abusive. So you have to know what your triggers are. And once you become more comfortable in yourself, then you could be more open and available to bring someone in. Because with that fear, you're already setting yourself up to be triggered if they say something that doesn't quite fit for you. So really aligning yourself is key, I would think, before venturing into that. But also know that, energy is real, in my opinion, so you can kind of feel the energy of,
I agree.
and if someone is for you or not. And that comes with age as well. You'll be better at it and detecting it. But sometimes, you do have to put yourself out there. And, if someone's a kind-hearted person, give it a shot. And, the worst thing they could say is no. That's what I tell myself. It's the worst thing I could say right here. But you have to be prepared to take that in by working on your
Right. Really. I feel like a lot of people have their own definition of mental illness. So what is your definition of mental illness?
You guys are good. Okay. My definition of mental illness would be something that is happening psychologically that is impacting your everyday life and your daily function, and it's impeding in front of you. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be severe mental illness, various diagnoses, but it could be your experience with trauma. And maybe you don't have a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, but the trauma you experience might be enough to impede in your daily life in certain ways. And we just talked about socially would be an example of that.
Any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? One more for the road?
I think we just,
Sorry. When it comes to delusion, when I see a lot of kids, well, not kids, but teens have a lot of delusions and can't really put their finger on if they're delusional or if they're just thinking, like, how. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to ask, but
no, I know what you're trying to get at.
Yeah. To piggyback off what she said, I feel like people use delusion and they don't use it carefully. Like, some people are actually delusional and some people play about being delusional. Some people are delusional and it's hurting them, like mental illness delusional.
yeah, but they're
And a lot of
They realize that they're doing that.
yeah.
and if they y'all, I will. I can get that.
I know that was because I know a couple of people like that, but so
Use the mic.
I think I may be a little delusional, just because of something that happened in my past. And like, I've been dating since I was like 11 years old, and like those relationships were all real to me, and I took them seriously. So I feel like they affected how I date now. So my boyfriend, he's from New York, and he went to see his family, and on his way back, he didn't charge his phone. So I haven't spoken to him for like maybe 7 hours. And in my head, I'm just like, oh, he's out. He's waking up with some girls in New York City having a ball. And then he got home and he told me what happened. And it made sense what he said, but I still wasn't believing him.
Right.
Because of, yeah. So like, what's up with that?
Right.
And that makes sense.
That's the real
Like, if I hear you still work, is that trauma?
So, and let me just clarify with the rest of the group. Is that how you're defining or clarify delusional? Is that how is that an example of delusional, or are you also including seeing and hearing things that aren't there?
No, not that.
Are you including that? Is that what you're saying too?
Yeah. She's like everything.
So it's two things. Yeah, it's two separate things.
Nowadays, how they.
A lot of girls are delusional. They just don't. But I feel like people just use it like, I'm delusional because I keep stalking him or I keep texting him. I feel like people really struggle with that. Like, it's an actual struggle thing. Like, people think it's something that is really not. Projected as a joke.
Yeah, people will laugh at them, but I don't think it's funny when they delusional. Yeah. They take that stuff. They sure. Some people do stuff that shouldn't even be done.
And it can become deadly, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Mind you, my boyfriend has never done anything to make me feel like unsafe or like he would hurt me or do something. And I'm still thinking these things, like, where you at? What are you doing? And I have to work out.
Yeah, like, you're really what are you doing?
But in terms of, actual delusions or delusions of grandeur, when someone, we see people that have even narcissistic type of tendencies and they think that they portray themselves as being something that they're not. It's various forms of delusion. And the way to determine the distinguish between real and perhaps false would be professional assessment, evaluation, which can start in the school setting and then extend out into the medical setting. But one of the places to start would be like what we call a mini mental, which is a quick kind of, you can find it online, quick kind of assessment You could also personally do the ACEs, ACES, which you find online as well, where it's a checklist of experiences of trauma. So you can start to do some screening tools of yourself, or perhaps offer it to a friend, where they can start to do some self-assessment to see, is this, is this real, or is this me being hormonal, me growing and learning? And, the experience of the boyfriend is real. I don't know any person, I will say, I won't just say women, but I know plenty of adults, probably the majority of adults, that have had that same experience. And if I'm being truthful, sometimes there aren't any red flags and it's intuition and you're not delusional and it's real and it did happen. I don't care how nice the person is. That's mommy talking, okay? The teenager.
That's the mommy. That's just the mommy talking. Like it's a little growth. You gotta go with that one. Listen.
Yeah. So you have to follow. Sometimes your intuition will tell you things, but you have to also know when it's coming from your gut or it's just coming from here, because we do like to tell ourselves stories, and that story will get bigger and bigger and bigger. So in order to get that storyline to not be false, you do need to communicate, not have an outburst based upon the storyline, but start to ask questions, have a discussion. If something doesn't feel right and you're not getting validated or the information that you are seeking, and you're asking in a respectful way to your partner, then it might be time for you to choose another option. It doesn't have to be that someone is physically, emotionally harming you or abusing you, or that they're cheating, for you to feel as though it is not fulfilling enough for you to be in that relationship that might be causing you to feel delusional. Sometimes that's enough.
But how do you know if it's coming from, how do you identify where it's coming from, like your gut or your mind? Like, it could be confusing.
It can be. And that's when you ground yourself. That's when I hit the floor, right? So that's when you literally, for me, one of my books, what you see here, is self-regulation, mindfulness. And so having a mindful practice of being still and just listening, being still and listening will help you. You need to calm your mind. So when you calm your mind, then it's not available to tell you those stories, right? So you need to sit still. Now, that meditation is beautiful, but it doesn't work for everyone. Meditation for some might be listening to music while, sitting quiet in the dark. It could be cooking a meal. For some people, driving without the radio on. So whatever is going to allow you to be still and connect to yourself, then your mind will calm down, and that'll allow you to better hear your intuition.
But just how you said meditation don't work for everyone, affirmations don't either. So how do you control your thoughts?
Okay, it cut out a little bit, so if you could repeat that.
I said, just how you said meditation isn't for everyone, it don't work for everyone. Affirmations don't work for everyone either. So how do you control your thoughts?
Affirmations are great, but you're right. Everything's not for everyone, and meditation's not for everyone. And I think that right there is where I would recommend that we not do. What we shouldn't do is to try to control our thoughts. You allow them to come in, and you allow them just to flow and to leave, not to ruminate in your head, but to come and to exit. And then, you give yourself that grace. Okay, I just thought something really crazy, right? What am I doing? I shouldn't think that, but what if he's really doing that? And then I don't know, because then that, is what you need to release. Not the thought, right? But that perseveration, that rumination. So, allowing the thought to come in. What if he's doing that? Okay, bye. What if he's not? I'm going to let it go until something else tells me otherwise. And that is a practice. It's like exercising a muscle. You don't just get there. You really have to have a mindful practice. And for me, when I was your age and when I was in college, it definitely was dancing. And it wasn't only in the studio. I had a tiny bedroom, and I would dance in that bedroom like I was on stage for Alvin Ailey. So that would allow me, that was my mindful practice. I didn't know back then I was definitely in a meditative state when I was doing that. And then when I was done, I would, be better aligned to make better decisions. And I would feel good. You get an endorphin release when you move, right? When you move back and forth, when you do rhythmic activities, when you listen to music that's rhythmic, whether it is rap, R&B, or African drumming, which is wonderful for a nice dopamine release in your body. So you could do things that are repetitive in nature. Even doing mandalas and coloring is a repetitive activity that'll get the good juices flowing. It'll actually make you feel pretty good. Then you'll be better in terms of your thoughts versus trying to control them, but being in a better space and available for helpful thoughts, useful thoughts.
Could that work with the person that has BPD?
She didn't hear you. Gotta say it again.
Could that work for a person who has BPD?
Can you define her?
Bipolar disorder?
Oh, okay. Oops.
Okay, bipolar. It has like a little bit of a cutting out, but I think I heard the bipolar disorder. Yeah, so there are certain conditions that medication can certainly help. And I'm not in a place where I'm a person to push medication or to be against it. But whether they're on medication or not, absolutely, mindful practices, rhythmic-based activity can certainly help anyone, for sure. There are studies even around, as an example, of different diagnoses for older adults that have dementia, which causes them to have different behavioral and emotional changes. That rocking in a rocking chair back and forth, that rhythmic activity actually helps them to get in a calm and alert place. And so this goes back to what I showed you all in the beginning, the studying of the brain, that we have different reflexes in our body that when you trigger those reflexes will then elicit certain chemicals. And so repetitive rhythmic movement is one technique that you can certainly use. And I think, Ms. Johnson will tell you that certain family members, people that we have connection to, if you rock back and you see them rocking back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Put yourself in your own family, people that do this, or they shake their leg constantly. That is the kind of very similar in terms of that dopamine release. Why do people do that? Well, it feels good to them. It's soothing.
Comfortability. So we only have questions for one. We only have time for one question. One more question. What was your question before we let her go?
It was about like when you're mentally attached.
Oh, I want to let you. So when you're mentally attached to someone and you can't let them go, I feel like this is going to wind up being a part 2 because they have a lot of great questions for you. Yes.
That's a tough one. And
That's a tough one.
we've all been there, and actually that's the first piece of advice is to not judge yourself. Nothing's wrong with you. It's a normal thing to have an attachment to someone. And sometimes it isn't healthy, as someone mentioned before, if it's too much of attachment, it could be dangerous, right? But I think first of all, the first step is acknowledging that there is an attachment, and then to really discern, is it a healthy attachment? Is it an unhealthy attachment? Is it a toxic attachment? Is it one that has served its purpose and now it's time to let it go? And so ways to do that would be, exercises for releasing. And that's going to bring me into a different area of my work, which is spirituality, but releasing. And, you may hear people talk about journaling, like journal and write things down. Well, when I have people work on releasing, I have them, one technique would be to write it down, but then to let it go, which might mean tearing it up and throwing it down the toilet, right? Or even better, taking it and disposing of it far away from the place where you reside. It is almost symbolic for you, energetically just allowing it to exit out of your space. And you want to send that person off with love and compassion. It's hard to do, especially if it was tumultuous or someone wasn't kind to you. But if you lead with love, you receive love, right? What you put out is what you get back. And so, you know, you want to put out that love and send them off with compassion because you need to choose you first. And in order for you to choose you first, you're going to have to release the individual that was there for a season.
So I thank you. Oh, what was that last thing you said?
And maybe they're no longer needed on your journey, at least not at this time.
Did you hear that? So we would like to thank you on behalf of the Dragon's Den. Everybody want to chip in and tell her thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Varleisha, and we would love to have you again. Thank you for joining Glasgow High School. Thank you.
Those books you got.
Yes, and I'm definitely going to send them a link so that they can look into them because I do know they are on Amazon platforms, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
They did their, I was going to say they did their research. Okay, so you have a great day and thank you for joining the Dragon's Den.
Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Keep the camera day clear, guys.
You too.
So that was so wonderful. Did you hear like the things that she was saying and like, you know, giving good advice?
Definitely.
Impactful.
We need a part 2.
Definitely. Need a part 2 for that? Y'all gonna think about questions? Okay.
But I need to write down that question.
You feel like you need to write? Okay. And you know, being prepared is also a great thing for us to be. And we already know that it's almost that time. So is there anything else anybody wants to say about today's show and that you will want to tell our audience today?
I feel like if you are struggling with mental illness, the more you keep it in, the harder it gets. I know it is hard to let it out, but the more you keep it in, the harder it gets.
I know she did say like there was a hotline that you guys can call if you are feeling like you need some kind of assistance and you don't have that. And it's 988, right? 988. So if you are having those issues, please do not be afraid to reach out to someone. And please do not be afraid to talk to your peers, as she stated. Because sometimes we don't want it to be too late to get help.
Right.
You know?
If you go to Glasgow, I feel like the first person that I would talk to is Miss Johnson. If that's honest. And Miss
Can I say that?
and Miss Johnson, I'm like, telling y'all. You're going to run right. Oh, my God. Want to get you right.
Thank you for saying that. Sometimes, you know, it can... I love it that the kids will come to us and they will speak to us. And so, and you know, you guys ask me and Miss Speaks, are we okay some days? And I love that, you know, and that's a great thing. So always remember, like, when you're upset and you come in here and you might think that somebody's being angry at you, it's not always about you. It could just be that they were going through something at home. Yeah.
I would just say, like, find, like, something you like to do, and just, like, if you got a lot going on, just do what you like to do. Like, for me, it's spirit for me.
Samanya. Yeah. Here at the tank, so you're a from SNAP.
No, same feeling. Oh, teach Diane. I want to say something here. I would just listen.
So we are going to close out the Dragon's Den. I am so excited that we had the experience to talk to Dr. Varleisha, and we do want to welcome her back again because that was an awesome show. You guys had great questions. That's like, you guys really had great questions. G, how you want to close this out, Belle? Yeah.
Okay.
On part for the win. This is how we begin.
Working together toward a common goal, inspiring excellence through academics, athletics, and the arts, never giving up until the goal is accomplished.
Hey, that's what we do here at Glasgow. That's how we get down. Thank you for joining our podcast. Until next time. You did really good.